Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, innovation is what we here at ITV love to do. And our new innovation is none other than the Daily Factor. And inshallah, we'll be coming to your screens from 3:30 to 5 o'clock every Monday to Friday. But it's not just going to be myself. I have with me my colleague and my co-host, Famida Kassam. Famida, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And well, this is something special, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. Wa alaikum salam and assalamu alaikum to our viewers. Welcome to the Daily Factor. For us, before we begin, let's look at the COVID updates for South Africa. South Africa has recorded over 5,000 new COVID-19 cases for 5 days in a row. This takes the total number of infections so far in the country above 1.6 million. This comes after South Africa detected 5,074 new infections on Sunday. The death toll has now increased to over 56,000. Of the latest fatalities, 16 were from the Free State, 15 from the Northern Cape, 6 from the Western Cape, and 1 from KwaZulu-Natal. Looking at other news now for us.
Well, let's go to our local updates.
Joining us now is NAPTOSA's Executive Director, Basil Manuel. Welcome, Basil.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon to you also, Basil. I think what's important for me, and I think you're going to be asking Basil this, of course, the important questions of the vaccination process, and I'm going to leave it to you.
Yes, Basil, could you share with us what government plans are to vaccinate educators in the country?
Yes, Famida. First of all, on Friday past, the teacher unions, NAPTOSA, together with the other 4 unions, were in a meeting with the Deputy Director General, where they shared with us, of course, the fact that they've secured 500,000 Johnson & Johnson vaccines that will specifically be used for the education sector. Not only teachers, but teacher assistants, your cleaning staff, your secretarial staff, your ground staff in public schools. And of course, we elated with that information because we've been fighting for teachers to be recognized as frontline workers, people who in their daily run of working come into contact with 100 to 150 households, not just children, but households, because those children go back to homes. And of course, it is not only about the teacher unions. The ministry supported us. The Ministry of Health supported us, and many other groups had thrown their weight behind this. And so we are elated that this is happening. However, there are a few glitches.
And are you confident that the vaccination process will be completed by the time that the schools decide to go into full maximum capacity?
Famida, as this particular rollout will happen, we were made to understand that, first of all, the release of the vaccines by the Food and Drug Administration of the United States had to happen, because you remember that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was stopped because there were some issues, and they've got to sign off on it and release it. So the beginning of the vaccination period will be dependent on that release. Now, we were hoping that the vaccines would be on our soil by yesterday, Sunday, or the latest today. That appears not to have happened, but we still have a bit of room. But our room is only 3 weeks, and we have to get this done in 3 weeks' time. So we are hoping and praying that before the end of this week, we will have the vaccines on our doorsteps. Now, as you so rightly assume, it's a massive undertaking to get 500,000 people vaccinated, given how slow the vaccine rollout has been up to now. But of course, every education district will have a vaccination center, and the big districts will have more than one. 2 provinces will even have mobile clinics that are going to do this. And one of the important points is that teachers and education workers that are employed by the Department of Education don't need to register. They will be automatically registered. Governing body paid staff don't have to register either. Their names and details will be forwarded. So they only have to arrive with the ID documents when the rollout does start. And we hope that this will happen at the very latest, the beginning of next week. But it still remains a massive undertaking. Logistics such as trying not to disrupt schools don't seem possible because we will still be at school and we would have to, I assume, take a half a day off school to do that. But under normal circumstances, we would have tried to do it on a weekend, but that will just not be possible. We are hoping that everything falls in place and we definitely will get the rollout ASAP.
Basil, I want to ask, of course, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been the one that government has indicated that will be used for the educators. As a union, are you confident in it? Because, you know, you've been hearing a lot of people complaining about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, that there's some sort of heavily intoxicated after effects with regards to that vaccine. So are you as NAPTOSA confident that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is the right one for these educators?
It's a very difficult question to answer, of course, because we are neither medics nor are we, do we have special information. However, we've asked the questions, and the questions that we've asked have been to the scientists. And we've had assurances that this vaccine, the efficacy thereof, as well as, of course, the quality by comparison to others is equally good. But what stands us in good stead is that this is a once-off vaccine. It's not a double dose, it's a single dose vaccine, the same that they will use in the rural areas in South Africa, because there too, there's doubt of whether people will return. And I think that with all the vaccines, there are a certain number of questions that will be asked. Now, the important thing about the question as well is that I've got to state up front that this is not a compulsory thing for anybody. However, as a union and as a person who believes that we need to be doing this, NAPTOSA, through myself, as well as other unions, we are saying to our members, please, here's a golden opportunity. You're skipping the queue because you may not have been next in line. Now you're next in line. Don't let this opportunity slip you by. And even if you're doubting, get your name on the list. And if you change your mind, so be it. But then, of course, you're going to have to fall in line with the general group when that happens.
NAPTOSA Executive Director Basil Manuel just giving us an update with regards to educators. Of course, they are now next in line with regards to the vaccination. We thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. You too be safe. And it's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. Famila, interesting terms. I think, you know, I mean, as a mother, you'd want your kids to go back to a school where you know that the environment is safe. And I think if educators get vaccinated, that's the first start, isn't it?
You know, I think it's more that we're actually not tapping into the fact that, you know, you have your educators, but you also have learners in the school. So a concern for me as a parent is when are our learners also going to be vaccinated? So I think we need to be pushing for this quite soon. Teachers are there. They are following the protocol in terms of masks and everything. But it's also the kids, you know, lunchtime, a lot of them are playing around. It's a bit of a concern. So the concern is still there. You know, for us, I wanted to ask you early on, in terms of other news with regards to the NPA, I believe you were in contact with the NPA. Iqbal Sharma has been making headlines recently. Hey?
Yeah, I think, you know, just to wrap it up in a minute or so. Okay, so of course, Iqbal Sharma, along with the former Free State Agriculture Rural Development Head, Peter Tabete, they were in court this morning, of course. Now, they pleaded not guilty to a 25 million rand feasibility study that was done in 2011. Now, this was irregularly granted to Lunani Investments 204. Now, Iqbal Sharma is a Gupta associate. And of course, his house, one of the houses that were featured in one of these lifestyle shows was, of course, Top Billing, yes, was, of course, it's under investigation also. So, I mean, this is going to be really interesting. The NPA is pushing for this to happen because they believe that they want to crack down on a number of the Gupta associates. Now, we all know that the NPA are working closely with Interpol to have the Gupta brothers brought to South Africa. Now, of course, it's going to be a lot of logistics in order for that to happen. So this is just probably scratching the surface in trying to get the Gupta brothers here. So, of course, we will be keeping in contact with the NPA. We were supposed to speak to Sindisiwe Twala. She's the NPA spokesperson, but unfortunately, she's currently in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court for the bail hearing that is currently happening at this moment. So what we know is that Iqbal Sharma and Peter Tabete could be getting bail, but this case is still not out of the woods yet. Well, do join us after the break. We will be going to our international news. Stay tuned to the Daily Factor.
Welcome back to the Daily Factor. Joining us today is Prince from Nigeria. For us, you were contacting Prince earlier on. There were some incidents in Nigeria happening.
Twitter has been banned in Nigeria. Can you believe it? I mean, this for me is just, it reaps of signs of a sort of totalitarian way in which you can go ahead and run a country. And I feel that in Africa today, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. But to get more on this, let me welcome, of course, Prince Yomi Gadebu. Prince Yomi, thank you so much for joining us. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
We're doing fine, thanks, Prince. I think that the question should be asked to you. I mean, Twitter has become such, I mean, I know that in Nigeria, Twitter is used on such a constant basis. But then, of course, over the weekend, the Nigerian cabinet had approved that Twitter is banned and any citizen using Twitter will be arrested. Just give us an update on currently what is happening in Nigeria. And I mean, why has this happened?
It's actually a sad reality that a duly elected democratic government would become so autocratic in nature as to the extent of saying that citizens cannot freely express their rights, in the 21st century Nigeria. It is actually a sad one. And I think so much pressure on the government to change their stance on the ban or the suspension of Twitter in Nigeria, because I think that basically the government was angry that the tweet of Mr. President was pulled down, and we understand that Mr. President tweets contravene the rules of engagement of the Twitter login, and they reserve the right to pull it down or suspend whoever they think has infringed or has flouted their rules. That is not to say that the president will now come up with a rule that over 200 million people should be disenfranchised from using the Twitter network. I think it's so unfortunate. It is unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it is very unfortunate because, I mean, when Muhammadu Buhari, of course, the current sitting Nigerian president, came in, of course, he spoke of the freedom of press or the freedom of speech. But I mean, many years down the line, it seems as if this isn't the case. And as a Nigerian citizen, as an African citizen, surely this is something of concern, isn't it?
It is, of course. And I also again think that not everyone will do the bidding of the government, but I think accusation or the what the government has posited is that Twitter is aiding terrorism and in the country. For instance, some of the statements made by the leader of the IPOP group, Nnamdi Kanu, I think the government might write to an extent, but I think they should have engaged instead of using force. There should have been some sort of engagement with the Twitter management, to an extent, instead of outright suspension. I think they should have put into cognizance the fact that we have over 200 million Nigerians using this platform, and people use it for their businesses and other things. People even rely on their daily on this platform. I don't think which is right. They might have
I think we seem to be losing Prince there. Prince, I think we just lost Prince there in terms of his audio. For me, I'm just hearing this over here, and I think it's quite sad that in an African country as big as Nigeria's, we now have a problem with regards to censorship of Twitter. That shouldn't be happening.
But I'm sure Nigerian citizens must be opting to try different social media platforms.
Yeah.
If Twitter's being banned at the moment, so they must be going to other social media platforms.
I think
I wonder if Prince, maybe we could ask him. Prince, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I'm here.
Prince, sorry, we were disturbed earlier on. I think it was a signal problem. Hopefully it's not the government interfering with the signal that side now. Prince, in terms of other social media platforms, are citizens planning to, are they opting to use other social media platforms to express their concern?
So far download the phone, I've been using another location to just so they can spell. You can make your rules, but we will also express our feelings. Some are using other media like Facebook, Instagram, other social media. They are using to register their grievances against the government. But I also again would like to make a position that the government should have at least cognizance that some citizens make their living through this platform. They should have at least engaged instead of using force.
Yeah, I think, to add to that, Prince Yomi, other sort of platforms. Now, we have one of our vision mixers, Kabir, who is also from Nigeria, and he's been saying there's been other various forms of platforms that people are using. But if they use it, then government's going to come after them. Can you just name us the platform, and of course, just how severe is it if a citizen uses it and government is able to go ahead and catch them actually using that platform?
The platform being used majorly, people are still using Twitter. I must be very frank with you. And Nigerians are still using Twitter, but they are using another method. Because if you use the conventional networks that are registered with the Nigerian government, you will not be able to access Twitter, like using maybe Globacom, Airtel, and some other, like MTN and some other things. I think that you will not be able to access Twitter using those networks. But Nigerians are downloading VPNs on their phone.
Yes, that's the
what that means that once you have that VPN, you can even say you are in the UK, you are in Canada, you are in Ghana, wherever you want to choose, and you'll be able to tweet. And Nigerians are making their position loud and clear that the government must revisit their decision on the suspension of Twitter, because some people make adverts, they make a living through this platform. So even Facebook, if you go on Facebook now, Nigerians are making their voice very clear that government must rescind their decision on this and they must revisit this issue. And I think they are also giving it a serious consideration now.
Yeah, Prince Yomi, to add to that, I mean, this was the same platform, right, that was used for Muhammadu Buhari's presidential elections. The irony of it, I mean, I find it to be very hypocritical. Okay, it's fine, you can use it when I want to become the president, but when something goes against me, then I'm going to immediately take it away. Surely Nigerian citizens are looking at this and saying, well, we can't have a leader who has this much of double standards.
I am going to say this categorically, that the media handlers of the president, they are not doing him any good. His advisors are not advising him right. I read a message on Facebook this morning by Chief Dele Mohamedou, the CEO of Ovation magazine. He said he used Twitter to brought the president to power. Dele Mohamedou used Twitter rigorous President Buhari, and this was from the power. And now it's that a Twitter administration that it runs against the rules of engagement. They pull down the tweet, and what the government should have done was to engage. Instead, they put a ban on. I think it is double standard, if I am to say, and I do not want to blame the president. I blame his handlers, those who are his advisors, and those handling his media activities. They must not. They have not advised him right on such a decision.
Prince Yomi, of course, we saw what happened last year in Nigeria on the streets, which was very, very sad, where, the military was just really using rough tactics against the citizens. We have, of course, what is happening with Boko Haram, and we've seen Boko Haram coming back into the frame with regards to, a lot of the pupils and a lot of the girls being, kidnapped again. This doesn't look good for Nigeria, doesn't it? And what now needs to be done with regards as a Nigerian citizen? What do you think now needs to be the next step in order to bring some sort of social cohesion, but also social stability with regards to what is currently happening in one of Africa's most populous countries?
I think one of the problems with Nigeria is the problem of leadership. Nigeria is not lucky with leaders, and I can tell you that what happened during the NSAS protest was rather quite unfortunate. Citizens came out en masse to protest, and they were brutalized. It was rather quite unfortunate. But I want to say that it is not enough for us to condemn the government. It is not enough for us yelling and making statements that would not go far. I think it is enough for us to go out en masse during elections, vote, and vote right. And after voting, I think, again, we should stand by our votes so that our votes can be counted. A people are a reflection, a leader. The people deserve whatever kind of leader they get. And I think that if we can be proactive in the areas of electing our leaders, I think Nigeria will get it right.
Prince Yomi Gabadebu, he is an analyst with regards to public relations, and of course just giving us an idea of currently what is happening in Nigeria. Twitter, of course, being banned right there. And, for a democratic country to ban Twitter, I mean, this is just a sad reality of currently what is happening in the world. And, of course, we wait to see whether ECOWAS and the rest of the West African region will go ahead and try and persuade the Nigerian government to reinstate Twitter. Prince Yomi, I say thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Well, I'm just reading now, Famida, in this year, according to the World Press Freedom Index, Nigeria is ranked 120th out of 180 countries in the Reporters Without Borders. And I just think to myself that in a world where we are fighting for press freedom, this is a sad reality right here. And again, this is one of Africa's most populous countries. It really is a sad reality, isn't it?
Definitely. I was also reading about how businesses are going to be affected with this whole ban. It's the suspension is in the country is indefinite at the moment. Hey.
And you know what? You've got COVID that has, of course, wreaked havoc in Nigeria. And the fact that this is happening, because a lot of people are relying on social media and digital media to go ahead and make their living. And unfortunately, if you shut that, if you close that tap down, unfortunately, you won't be able to go ahead and make that happen. Well, let's move from the west of Africa and let's go to the Middle East. Now, of course, Famida, this weekend, we saw two journalists that have been quite vocal and have really been standing up for the rights of Palestinian people, Munna and Mohammed Kurdud. They were, of course, arrested in Sheikh Al Jarrah this weekend. They were released after that, but the sad reality was that obviously, at the end of it, press freedom, and we're talking about press freedom again being suppressed in Palestine. And of course, your next guest, Famida, is somebody from Al-Quds University, will of course give us an idea of currently what is happening there.
Yeah, definitely. It would be nice to actually hear from Munir Nusayba. He's from the Al-Quds University. Munir, assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Daily Factor.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. Munir, could you give us an update as to what happened to the journalists that were arrested or detained this weekend? Have they been released? And also take us back to the point at what caused for the journalists to be detained.
Yes, unfortunately, the occupation authorities, the Israeli occupation authorities, have been continuously following, trying as much as possible to silence the Palestinian people and to silence any opposition of its policies and of its forcible displacement of the Palestinian community in Sheikh Jarrah, of its attacks, sorry, on Al-Aqsa Mosque as well as other places. And one of the tools that it uses is that it attacks journalists, it attacks human rights activists on a continuous basis. During the past few weeks, we have witnessed a number of such attacks. And it's not only one. So just a few days ago, two journalists from, for example, Al Jazeera have been attacked by the Israeli police. One of them, her arm has been broken and was also arrested and released. Yesterday, they arrested the twins, Mona al-Kurd and Muhammad al-Kurd, both from the Sheikh community that is currently facing continuous oppression. They have closed the street in which they live. People cannot enter, or Palestinians cannot enter and exit that road, and they are continuously attacking journalists and preventing them from entering that road. And they even arrested both the young man and the young woman, who, because they are very well known as activists, they have been reaching out through social media to not only in Palestine but also internationally. They have become very well known activists, and that's why the Israeli authorities have basically arrested both of them yesterday and released them. They have also, in many cases, they have beaten journalists, but also some journalists have been injured by the firearms that are used by the Israeli police forces in the different streets of Jerusalem. There are two journalists, Wahbi Mikkiya and Zain al-Halawani. They were arrested for 5 days and then finally released with an order to be away from Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood for 2 weeks. So they interrogated them for a number of days, they scared them, and then they released them. And so the attacks on journalists are severe, are continuous, despite the fact that international law protects journalists and human rights defenders. Actually, these two types of people, they have a special protection under international law, especially in an occupied territory, where an occupying power is exercising the authority of its army and other authorities in that city. However, unfortunately, because of the lack of intervention from the international community, Israel has been continuing its action against anybody who tries to raise their voice. And by the way, there are things that have been documented, like, you know, somebody has been arrested, somebody has been detained, somebody has been beaten up, an arm has been broken. All of this is documented. But I can tell you that there are things that are not being documented because we don't even know enough about them. The Israeli intelligence forces calls people on a continuous basis. I've heard of human rights defenders and others who have gotten calls from the Israeli intelligence telling them that we are aware of your activity and we are watching you and we will follow you and things like that. So they are not only doing the obvious thing of arresting people and hitting people with bullets and with their firearms, but also scaring people. They want to silence. They want to silence Palestinians, to silence journalists, to silence peace activists, to silence anybody who is shouting.
What I wanted to ask, Munir, was that in terms of you being an international law professor, you said everything is getting documented. In this specific case, what actually has been documented? What was the reason for doing the arrest?
For whom exactly?
For Jivara.
Jivara, I actually don't know. But what I heard from different journalists is that Jivara was arrested and she was told in the interrogation that we started with you because Al Jazeera is well known and that we want to, basically they want people out of Sheikh Jarrah. But I haven't documented this myself. I haven't talked to Jivara personally, and therefore I cannot, I cannot actually give details for that.
No, definitely. Faraz, you were going to ask something?
I mean, this all started, of course, we saw what happened in Sheikh al-Jarrah when the Israeli security forces had come in. And of course, during Ramadan, during the Taraweeh prayers at the Masjid al-Aqsa compound. But what was, I think, the tipping of the iceberg was the bombing of those media buildings. And Munir, being somebody who's an expert in law, you'd be able to give us an idea of just how severe that was. The fact that they bombed the building where all the media houses were, and we're not just talking Al Jazeera, we're talking AFP, we're talking AP, various other media houses. That again is a sign that there is this willingness from Israel to go ahead and suppress media freedom and report facts to the global community.
Indeed, this incident it shows that Israel doesn't really care about what he thinks in the world. That care to the extent that they decided to bomb a building in Gaza, in which there are several news agencies based. Why would they do that? What type of military, in international law, only military targets are allowed to be targeted with a military strike, okay? And what type of military target does exists in a building like that? Have they proven that any military target actually exists? And even if it exists, and I think they haven't proven that there is a military target. Is it proportional? You destroy a whole building only because you claim of some military target existing in it or near it? Basically, Israel has shown again and again, not only during the most recent war, but also during previous wars, that it uses its military force to not to target military targets, but rather to punish the Palestinian population in Gaza with a collective punishment, targeting civilian buildings, targeting civilian targets, in order to punish the whole population, to show them that they will have to pay a very heavy price for any type of resistance. And this has been the case in this situation, in the most recent war and in the past. But also the fact that they are targeting such buildings, like a building with news reporters, it actually shows you that they actually don't care. And it's because of the lack of any intervention from the international community. We hear condemnation, yes, once in a while, but the condemnation is not enough. If sanctions are not conducted, these violations will continue.
One final question, Munir, before I let you go. I mean, I saw visuals of Munna and Mohammed coming out smiling, and it's sort of reminiscent. Of course, I wasn't, there during the apartheid time, but you see these old pictures of journalists that were arrested by the National Party's security forces, and you see them smiling and you see a positive spirit. Surely this is something that brings hope to the people of Palestine, that as long as they're around, they will push for that media freedom and giving the truth to the global community.
Of course. Continue to resist. This is something we have to do. We cannot, you see, if you are, I'm aware you are, I'm talking to a South African, right? So Palestine is unfortunately also under apartheid. Has been very well investigated. It has been very well documented and very well analyzed by human rights organizations, Palestinian, Israeli, and international. So as long as this regime continues, the apartheid regime continues, we will have to continue to resist. And we have to continue to be loud against it. And yes, they will arrest individuals, they will scare individuals, they will shoot at journalists, they will shoot at human rights defenders, they will arrest human rights defenders, they will threaten human rights defenders. But at the end of the day, we do not have the option as Palestinians and as human beings, to be honest with you, not even just the idea that we're Palestinians, as human beings, we do not have the option of being silent. This option does not exist, because if we are silent, it means that we're allowing this injustice to continue. And we cannot do that. So these young men and women at this early, Muhammad and Mona al-Kurd, the twins, they are both 23 years old. They have been very vocal. Their message has really gone through in Arabic and in English to the whole world. And they have been very successful in, together with many other colleagues actually from Sheikh Jarrah community and others, working together to get the message through. And I think they have managed to do that. And of course, they came out smiling, because that's part of, I think their feeling of resistance, that they should continue to resist. Basically, that's it. We don't have any other option. We will continue. We will smile when we can,
No, shukran so much, Munir, for making time for us, and we wish you all the best. And most importantly, please do take care, especially with what is currently happening in Jerusalem, in the Sheikh al-Jarrah area. And we wish you all the best with regards to that. Munir Nusayba from Al-Quds University is giving us an update with regards to what had happened with journalists that were arrested this weekend. Well, stay tuned. After this, we will be going to our community news. We'll be back with the Daily Factor.
Welcome back to the Daily Factor with myself, Femida Kassem, and my colleague Faraz Patel. We're going to look now at the community news. Joining us today is Abu Bakr Said, who is a representative from the Sabri Chesi Burial Association, and he's going to talk to us about the new bobcats that they've purchased. Assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam, and thank you for having me on your show.
It's most a pleasure. Faraz, you had some questions for the gentleman.
I think, what's the most interesting one with regards to this, Abu Bakr, and assalamu alaikum to you also. I think there's a lot of mayats that are currently happening, especially in the Lenasia area. Just talk to us about the significance with regards to the bobcats and how this will make it very convenient for you guys as a burial society, just to, make the workload easy on you.
So firstly, it's unfortunately that we had to turn to this equipment for the Muslim burials. Unfortunately, also it's because of the precedented times that we're living, or unprecedented times that we're living in. People generally don't attend a lot of mayats, and we find that there is no family members to assist. So because the volunteers were getting so tired, we decided to buy this bobcat, which allows us then to help close the cupboard. And also importantly is like this weekend, where City Parks only dug 10 graves, and on Saturday, we did 15 mayats. So the bobcat allowed us the opportunity of digging more graves so that at least we can fulfill the rights of our Muslim brothers and sisters.
Yeah, and I think that's very important, Abu Bakr, because, we're always so used to the traditional, using a spade to dig up the sand and, of course, bury the coffin. But this here just makes it very easy. And just from the organizational point of view, how much support has there been with regards to the purchasing of the bobcats? These are very expensive tools to buy, but how has the community helped? Because we know Lenasia is a big community and a very warm community. So how has the community, received this request from the Burial Society to try and make the workload easy for Sabri Chisti?
To be honest, we had a phenomenal response from our community. The community really came out and donated funds towards the Bobcat. Initially, before procuring the equipment, we wanted to make sure we're buying the right sort of equipment. So we weren't sure, should we buy a front loader, should we buy a TLB, or a little smaller Bobcat. When one of the community members allowed us the opportunity of using his machinery. So after using his machinery for a while, that's when we made an informed decision to say that this TLB would be the best equipment for us to use.
Abu Bakr, I know that you obviously active with regards to a lot of the mayats that are happening in Lens. Your advice to the community, because I think that we have a lot of people wanting to come in large numbers to mayats, either if it's friends or family. So just, from a burial society perspective, your advice to the community in just keeping safe, especially now with the third wave being here.
Yes, the third wave is here on our doorstep. Currently, as I'm speaking to you, I'm doing this interview at the Lenasia Cemetery, and that's why I'm hiding behind this white wall to try and do it. So definitely, we would recommend that people must come for the mayats. We don't want people to shy away and not come. Also, the limitations is set by the government with regard to 100 people per funeral. So when the mayat does occur, we normally give the family members and they come with the allocated quota. So thus far, we really didn't have issues with regard to the numbers of people coming in. And shukr, our community is being obliging. They've been following the regulations, etc. Only thing we do request is the brothers please wear masks when they are attending the cemetery, because often enough we find that people are not wearing masks, and this poses a huge problem when people are not wearing a mask, because the health authorities are on site, and if they see this type of behavior from our Muslims, and they can take away this dignified right of ours for the Muslim burial.
Abu Bakr Sayyid from the Sabri Chisti Burial Society. I say Jazakallah to you for making a time for us, and please continue to do your good work. I mean, this is an organization that has been there for so many years. They continue to do good work, and we wish you all the success, the barakat, and the ability to keep you healthy, especially you, Abu Bakr, to go ahead and complete your task serving the community of Lenasia.
I mean, and do remember all our front line volunteers in your duas as well, because they play an important role and important aspect in the Sabri Chisti organization.
No, I mean, Abu Bakr Sayyid from the Sabri Chisti Burial Society. Famida, this is an organization that my dad, whenever he went to Lenasia, and this is one of the first masjids he likes to visit. And their work ethic is always something else. I don't know if you've experienced, going to even the Sabri Chisti Masjid, the Masajid, and they've got such a great work ethic. It's something that has to be commended.
I think as a male, you probably had more experience in that area than I did. But as you're talking about burials, we're going to look now at the Muslim statistics in South Africa, how many deaths have been because of COVID-19 in South Africa. And according to Muslim stats, South Africa, as at Sunday, June the 6th, 2,766 Muslims have been victims of COVID-19 in South Africa. From this figure, 1,776 were males and 990 were females. The highest, for us, the highest fatalities were reported in the Western Cape. It's actually the details, the stats are actually on screen right now, where you can see the highest fatalities were reported in the Western Cape with 984. In KZN, there were 750 fatalities, and in Gauteng, 686 Muslim fatalities from COVID-19. So inshallah, we just hope that, Allah keeps us safe, and inshallah, the elderly get vaccinated in time. As this virus is spreading quite fast, we are in the third wave at the moment.
Yeah, and may Allah grant, those who are sick, complete shifa, and those who have passed on, may Allah fill their qabr with nur, inshallah, and grant them Jannatul Firdaus. I mean, please do take care, our Muslim brothers and sisters. I mean, this third wave it's really severe, and every day, you hear of people who continually get COVID-19, and especially those who have those sicknesses that were before COVID-19, just adding to that. So please do take care. Well, we'll be back after the break with your market updates right here on the Daily Factor. Welcome back to the Daily Factor. And of course, we are waiting for our market analyst, Petri Redingling-Hayes from Herenia Capital Advisors to join us via Zoom. So we are going to give him a few minutes to go ahead and to join us. But Famida, I was just looking at the strengthening of the rand earlier on, and I think it's quite positive that this is happening. I know that our economy has taken a battering because of COVID-19, but I think it's quite important for us to, really look at the slight positives with regards to that.
Yeah, I think it's actually good news in a way, because our president is attending the G7 Leaders Summit, and I believe economy is going to be first on his agenda.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be important. I think he wants to bring a direct investment into the country, and especially now. I think last year, he had an investment summit here in South Africa, and of course, a number of conglomerates had pledged, to go ahead and, put their investment in South Africa, and we need that right now. We need that international investment, and of course, the balances and checks must be there with regards to, making sure that, when the investment is happening, that they are sticking to the rules and the guidelines with regards to South Africa, and I think that is going to be important. So, we have to take all of those positives and obviously hope, for the best with regards to the investment that's going to be coming into South Africa, and of course how it will go ahead and do it. And I think one of that, Famida, if the rand strengthens, then of course, you'll get a positive with regards to petrol. I know, the traveling is one of those things that really hits us quite hard. And I think when you look at that, that is definitely a positive with regards to the opportunities when the rand does strengthen.
Definitely. I was actually reading our president's message, his speech that was received this morning. He says that in expanding the invitation, the G7 group of countries acknowledged that South Africa's role in driving the continental response to COVID during the AU chairship and the contribution it can make to global progress. So South Africa is quite keen to hear from South Africa and our president. And for us, were we not going to get also our market indicators contact to give us some updates?
Yeah, I think we're just waiting for him to go ahead and just, get us there. So obviously when that does happen, we'll be able to go ahead and make it happen. But I think, what's important is, listening to what the president is saying, we'll be able to go ahead and make the best out of that situation.
Definitely. I was reading about this. Gatherings such as the G7 are important opportunities for South Africa to promote its view of a fairer and more peaceful world. They have an opportunity to promote our country as a destination in which to invest and do business. And as we know that for our president, that investing in South Africa is a key goal for him and, the country, and the benefits that it can provide, especially now with businesses being faced with COVID and being affected in so many ways. So we're hoping that what our president can go and give us and come back to us and report back would be good enough for us to move forward in terms of the economic role of the country.
Okay. Well, I think we have Petri now, Famida,
on
the line, so I'm going to let you deal with him.
Welcome, Petri. How are you? Can you hear us? Okay, we're just waiting for Petri Redingling-Hayes to join us right now.
I think Petri is coming on there, there we go, there's Petri,
Okay. Welcome and thank you for joining us, Petri.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're most welcome. Petri Redingling-Hayes, he's the portfolio manager at Herenia Capital Advisors. Petri, could you give us an update on today's markets?
Sure. It was a bit of a strange day, really. I guess a tale of three halves, if you could put it that way. We started off this morning. Well, let's start with sort of contextually. We had a very strong end of the week last week. The S&P 500 actually managed to end on an all-time record high, believe it or not. Didn't really make much hype, I suppose. But markets are looking relatively strong at this stage. We have, a number of tailwinds, I think, that are continuing to support markets and to continue, will probably continue to be supportive of markets going forward. So the expectation coming into this week was one, that the market will actually perform relatively well, that we'll probably have a strong week or a breakout week. If you look at the blueprint that's being laid out by the international indices or the larger sort of developed markets. And today we actually had a very disappointing start. I mean, the all-share index, fell actually for a good part of the first half of the day. And then sort of around lunchtime, we managed to get the top 40 index to go green for the briefest of moments. And now again, we're down just over 1/3% as the US markets have opened and are coming under a little bit of pressure. So it's been a bit of a strange day, to be honest with you, a bit disappointing. But again, it is the first day of the week. There is much, water still to run under this bridge before we really know, how the week is going to go. And there's also quite a bit of data expected to come out later this week, both locally and internationally. So I think, markets maybe just taking a bit of a breather. We did see this morning that the Chinese session or the Asian session was relatively bad. Tencent in particular was down around 1.8%. And that, as we know, Naspers is a big constituent on our market. So any kind of pressure that Naspers is under obviously translates into negative performance for our entire market. So it's a bit of a disappointing day, but not too bad. I guess if you look at the currency space, the rand at least, giving up a little bit of sort of ground. It had been very, very strong. As I think it's been very topical of late that the rand is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So we're trading currently at 13.52, which is around 0.6% weaker versus the dollar. It's not too bad. It's hanging on to the 13.50 level. I guess the real question is whether or not we're going to be able to maintain below 14. And also, to be very honest with you, from a pure stock market trading perspective, if the rand does weaken, it's probably going to end up playing in our favor, as a lot of the commodity stocks and resources counters will benefit off the back of that. So, yeah, I don't know. Bit of a strange day, strange start to the week. I'm quite, in anticipation. I'm waiting for a stronger week, but right now the S&P 500 down about 0.25%. So, much more to go before we really have a clear idea of what the week holds.
Petri, before before I leave you to go ahead and continue your duties, President Cyril Ramaphosa, I was talking to my colleague Famira Kassam, that G7 summit's going to be quite huge in trying to, decipher how good the rand could perform this week.
So I think, and I hate to be that guy, the bearer of bad news, right? I think South Africa has a credibility problem in the international arena. We have come out many times saying that, we've got corruption under control, and, lo and behold, the president is busy making that speech while the news story of the of the health minister is breaking, right? So I don't think that that's going to have too much impact on the rand. I think the rand's sort of strength at this stage is really born of dollar weakness. What we have been seeing over the last year and a half is an enormous amount of monetary stimulus. The US, the European nations, people have been printing a massive amount of money, and that obviously creates a devaluation effect. It creates an inflationary effect, and I think that's been a big driver behind the weakening of the dollar, particularly, and that has played into our favor. Right? There's also a number of, it's not all bad news. There is also some good news to be held. We as South Africans generally are way more pessimistic than the rest of the world, as you can tell by my sentiments around our credibility, right? So we tend to over-exaggerate and think things are a whole lot worse than what they really are. From a value perspective, the South African stock market is looking fairly cheap. We've actually had one of the stronger years we've had in a very long time on the top 40 index. And we've also, we have a lot of good quality companies that are trading at very low multiples. And that could potentially be a factor for inflows into our market, right? So there's two things happening. One, we have a sort of artificially weak dollar on the back of a huge amount of monetary stimulus, which at some point when inflation starts kicking in and they have to start tapering that monetary stimulus, we should start seeing a bit of a stronger dollar again. And on the other side, we're kind of one of the prettier girls at the ball, and everybody wants to dance with us and invest with us and all that type of stuff. So I think that overall, we're in a fairly good spot for value investors to seek entry into our marketplace. But the big risk at this point, well, there's twofold, right? One, the electricity situation. I don't think I can get much worse, to tell you the truth. We'll probably go to level 5 in the next couple of weeks, from what we hear. But I think that the major sort of driver behind the currency really is going to be what the US is going to do, and how they're going to deal with the inflation problem that's busy sort of creeping up. But in the immediate sort of short-term future, we probably continue to see South Africa sort of trading relatively better than the rest of the world.
Thank you so much, Petri Redingling. He's Portfolio Manager at Herenia Capital Advisors. Petri will be with us every single day from 20 to 5 to 10 to 5. So stay tuned to him. And of course, he will be giving you expert advice coming from the stock markets and of course, your daily market updates. Well, stay tuned. We're coming to you with your sport update. Well, the Springboks have announced their team for the upcoming British and Irish Lions series that will take place next month. And to discuss this with me is one of South Africa's great rugby brains. It's none other than Sibusiso Mjikeliso. Sbu, good afternoon and thank you so much for joining us here on the Daily Factor. I think we've just lost Sbu there. Well, of course, let me name you the team and of course some of the uncapped players that are obviously going to be there. Joseph Dweba, he plays for the Bordeaux Bagels. Excuse my French if it isn't that great. And of course, a number of other players have been called up to the team. But of course, a lot of the players, the fly halves in Elton Yankees, Andre Pollard, of course, Mornay Steyn, one of the more experienced players that are going to be going ahead and joining this team, the 3-test series that will be taking place next month. I think we do have Sbu back on Zoom. Sbu, can you hear me?
How's it for us? Yeah, I can hear you.
Good to see you, Sbu. Whenever I see you, I know we're going to be having a great conversation. Sbu, in about 6 minutes, the Springbok team, your take on it?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much what we expected. It's very much leaning on the 2019 World Cup winning squad. If it's not broken, don't fix it is mainly the name of the game. I think what they've done very, very well is to keep a lot of those players very much in the frame. Of course, a lot of them retired. Some of them retired. Bism Dawarira, Skalk Brits, and Francois Lowe. But then you're looking at guys that are coming in to fill those spots, like Oxen Chairs coming in, Marco van Staden, who is a capped Springbok, being brought in the fold. And there's word that, a guy like Marcel Coutier is not completely out of the running, even though he's not named in the squad. Of course, we know that Dwayne Vermeulen is carrying an ankle injury. So we don't know what further developments as far as the squad makeup will be. And don't forget that there's still some Rainbow Cup action this weekend. Still the Rainbow Cup North versus South final for the following weekend or the weekend after. So there's still a wee bit of rugby to play before we can cast eye on the Springbok squad and say, okay, these are the guys that are going to represent us. And they're going to be whittled down to 34 members once the SAA team has done its duties. So there's plenty to debate still.
Yeah, I think, Sbu, I remember speaking to you in 2019 on a different platform. Apalele Fassi, this guy, he's getting us excited. But your Penkre, we've been seeing these two guys for the Sharks, especially in the Rainbow Cup. They're going to be exciting players to watch, aren't they? If they are given the opportunity.
Absolutely. I've been banging on Pelele Fassi's drum for a few years now, since he came in as a 19-year-old, back when Robert Dupree was a head coach at the Sharks, gave him his first chance. Quick player. He did suffer an injury, shoulder injury, that he had needed to get surgery on last year before the resumption. And the Sharks haven't really been the same team that was lightning and exciting, but he has somehow managed to maintain his performances and keep them at a very, very high standard. So I definitely like the pick, like the selection. Fullback for me, there's a vacancy there, even though you'll say that Willie Leroux's there. And towards the latter stages of the World Cup, I thought Willie Leroux was a liability. But it transpired that he had some nerve damage on his shoulder. Still, for me, probably shouldn't have played, knowing that he wasn't 100%, but he somehow managed to carry through to the final and to victory. But I think now that we know that, you can't hide anything in international rugby, at least against the British and Irish Lions, you're going to get found out. I think a guy like Apelele Fassi, if you want to bring in that X factor, you'll definitely get it you know, your Yao Peng players and those guys, I think they're good to have in the mix. I don't see him breaking into the test squad just as yet. You know, there's Makazole Mapimpi there, there's Spoongosi there, guys who are fit, guys who've been there and done it. There's Damien Willemse who's played majority 15 in the last year and a half. So, yeah, you know, Yao Peng might be on the periphery, but Apelele Fasi might be looking good. I'm gutted for his teammate Cohen Bosch, though, who I thought would have made a good case for himself to be included in the team.
Sibusiso Mjikeli, so I know we will be making contact with you during the series and, of course, discussing what is going to be a very, very exciting tour. I say thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure.
No, there we go. Sibusiso Mjikeli, so one of the most senior writers, of course, for here in South Africa when it comes to rugby. And, of course, he's currently with News 24. And you know, I'm really, really excited for the upcoming series. And, of course, you know, the adding to the uncapped players, Sanele Nohamba, and, of course, Wandisile Simelane, of course, he will be part of that team that will, of course, be taking on the British and Irish Lions. They are in the squad. And, of course, as Boo had mentioned, Rassie Erasmus, along with head coach Jacques Niehaber, will, of course, be trimming it down when the time comes for that big series against Warren Gatland and his British and Irish Lions. Well, Famira, that's all we have for you here on Daily Factor. This has been an amazing, chaotic, I must say, opening day, but alhamdulillah, it's gone well.
Alhamdulillah, we did quite well in terms of the number of guests who joined us today. So we would like you to join us again tomorrow, inshallah, on the Daily Factor with myself, Famira Kassim, and my colleague, Faraz Patel.
And we say to you, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and we will see you again, same time, same place, on the Daily Factor.